We Need Each Other is a podcast about the importance of human interaction. It provides reminders that we are not intended to live in isolation. Human beings need each other. The things about another that pisses you off and the things that take you over the moon are all opportunities to see through another's eyes, recognize their intrinsic value, and then look more deeply within ourselves to find the love that's always there. So it is Women's History Month 2021. You know we deserve more than a month. It's women's history every single day. Because, let's be honest, where would this world be without women? First of all, we wouldn't exist because life cannot carry on, human life, without woman. And yes, it does require that sperm of a man. It doesn't require the man. Life cannot grow in a petri dish. It has to grow inside of woman. They haven't figured that out yet. They've tried. But it requires woman. So, okay, we'll take this month. But women is all about every day. So during this time, every year, people ask, who are the women that we admire the most? And who are we going to talk about in this month? And we throw in the Kamala Harrises and the Michelle Obamas and the Oprah Winfreys and the people in history, the Harriet Tubman and all the people that we have so much respect for. I don't go that route. Those people are, yes, dynamic women that have forged a way. And so I do admire them for that in a world that has attempted to hold them back, because that's what this world does. It attempts to hold women back and put us in categories that we fit in for the benefit of male. That's my perspective. That's how I see it. And I do admire those women, but you know what? I admire my mama. My mama lived to be 97 years of age, and there were many years in my early days that I thought she was a weak woman. She was the stay-at-home mom that cooked, cared for the house, took care of her husband and her children. And, I grew up in I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, so I thought that was not important, what she was doing, that there was a world out there calling us. But it wasn't until I was in my early 40s that I realized what this little dynamo really was. My mother was short, like maybe 5 feet tall, maybe. She mastered the woman's finesse. And it's the thing that I am always talking to women about now, today, how to finesse, because we forge our way in a masculine way in the world. That's not what the world is calling for or needed. We've seen the masculine. Look at where it's brought us into this insanity that we live in today. That's what white masculine energy has brought us into. It's calling for something different. Because you see, when man processes, it's a beauty that he's very direct, that he's assertive and he's competitive. There's a beauty to that. And science says that when man processes, he processes from left brain. The difference in woman, when she processes left brain, right brain, and her emotional system, her whole hormonal system comes into play. And that's what gives her what I refer to as the panoramic view. The way that she can see all the parts and the pieces of the picture and put it together to make it work. Where if you only have the masculine on the playing field, it will go direct towards something and create sometimes a mess because it wants to make it work when it needs all these other components to work, which is what happens when you're looking at the dynamic of the way that woman operates. And so that's what's been missing. That's what's been missing from the playing field. And that's why there's a women's movement afoot that's been for the last several years. And now there's a Black people movement afoot that's relatively new in the way that it's coming about. So look at the dynamic that a Black woman can bring to this playing field. So who do I respect? I respect my Black women, the ones that have been murdered, raped, pillaged, the ones that have been treated with complete disrespect, and still they thrive in the way in which they are able to thrive. It may not be thriving by white male standard, but we're still here. We're the ones who made it over in enslavement, and those are our ancestors, the ones who were raped over and over and over again to breed children for the master, to care for his crops, his property, his children, and his woman. That was the dynamic of what woman was. And they put us in these stereotypes of being like a Jezebel, and, we were the mammy. Oh, that mammy. That mammy still exists, and I don't even think you realize it. When you go to the black woman at work and cry on her shoulder and ask her to help you with this and stop what she's doing to care for you, that's that mammy instinct. And that's what black woman has been doing. And I think we know now that we have the right to say, no, not now, because I got to take care of my own. So there's a shift that's happening in this world that we're living in the dynamic of what woman empowered looks like. So I'm calling forth an understanding of that woman who has stood behind the man. She's the one that I'm clapping for and cheering on, because that man, the ones that we see in front of us, that are the ones that get all the respect and all the reward, they would be nothing without some woman that's behind them. It might be their mother. It could be their wife, their partner. It might be their neighbor. It could be their auntie. It could be anybody, a person in the workplace with them. But there's a woman, trust me, that's supporting that man, that allows him to be seen and heard and respected in the way that the society does. But I'm putting him aside, and I'm respecting the women that play that role from behind the scenes. Because you know what? We're coming out of the woodworks. We're coming out, and we're speaking our voices. I think it kind of started in this country with the hashtag Me Too movement, where women were accusing men of sexually inappropriate behavior. And I know that all of that is true. But I also know, as the black woman who was learning how to maneuver through corporate America that did not want me there, that actually told me that I was going to have to work harder, because I was the first one that ever gone through this training program in advertising for this particular company. Well, the second one. The first one was a male, and he didn't make it. And so you are going to train harder than anyone. And they lived up to that. But I digress. I watched as I was learning to maneuver through this world, and I would see my white, attractive females go and sit on the manager's desk and raise their skirts and cross their legs and speak in their tone and move in their manner to try to get whatever it was that they needed from him to make their lives more successful at work. Now, I don't know what happened on the other side of that maneuver, but I watched it happen. And I decided I am way too good for that, because I know I'm attractive and I know that men want me, part of the power of woman. But I don't have to use it in that way to get what I want, because I am also intelligent and capable. And so all of that works together when we allow it to with women. Years ago, I wrote a book called Resurrecting the Muse, and the subtitle is Woman's Guide to Rising Above Societal Conditioning, because we have been conditioned to put aside the power that we yield. Woman is so dynamically powerful because of her sexuality and her femininity, her compassion, and her intuition. But those are all the things that have been tossed aside in our society. Our intuition has been laughed at. Our sexuality has been used. Our intelligence has been ignored. But they all are there in the dynamics of woman. They're all there operating together. And it is my desire as a woman to be that, all of that, in one little, mighty little body that's called Francesca James. And you know what brings me joy? And the women that I respect and think about in this little month of women's history that we have, I think about my daughters. I have two beautiful daughters. They grew up with a really kind of crazy mother. Not crazy like out there in the world crazy, but crazy in my mind because I was doing way too much. I was being the dynamo at work because I knew I could be successful, but it took a lot to maneuver as a woman through a masculine world, but I did it. I was a wife. I was a stepmother. I was their mother. I was the person who handled the meals, who ran the household, who cooked the dinners, who helped with the homework. That's what woman's life is like when she's involved with family. That's not what man's life is like. In general, there are men who kind of maneuver through that world. I don't think they do it as well as women do. I've not seen one who actually does it as well as a woman who's really putting forth her best to do it. But it's done. And I'm going to give men respect that do that. But I'm going to tell you something. I left my corporate job every day and thought, man, I'm going home to my next job. I wish I had a wife. I wish I had a wife that could handle all the things that I'm getting ready to handle. Being a woman is a lot. And so we have a month to respect those who have stepped forward. But I'm respecting those who live in woman's body. So I started to say, I have these daughters who had a crazy mother, and somehow they've made it out into the world. And I'm always trying to check to make sure, are they as crazy as I was? They seem to not quite be, but they are being very successful in their worlds, and they are in relationship. And, you know, I have a grandson that one daughter is raising, and you know, my other daughter, she and her husband are worked together as a dynamic, powerful couple. And I'm just so proud of my children. And I think, you know, it had something to do with what I did and what my mother planted into me and what her mother planted into her, and so on and so on. And it is the dynamic of women that are my heritage that I am grateful for on Women's History Month. And so we take this moving forward to see, where are we? We are in a place where woman has stepped forth. Woman can run for president. Woman is vice president and will be president soon, I'm sure. My concern sometimes as I watch the women that are out in front is that they are operating still from a masculine construct. And that's not what the world is calling forth. That's not what's going to take us into the places that we are intended, from my perspective and my opinion, to go at this point in history. And so it is always my prayer that we remember the intrinsic nature of ourselves as women, and we step forward in that way. It reminds me of in my early days, my young days, in my 20s, not too long after college. I worked a couple of jobs before, but I went to work for IBM. And when I worked for IBM, what a white male world that was. And they sent us to refinishing school. That's what I called it. We would have to go away for weeks at a time to learn how to be an IBMer, to dress the way, to speak the way, to learn all of the coding, because I sold computers. The first time we were selling office computers, it was a whole new thing that we were doing. And we were to be IBMers, and it just didn't work for me. I couldn't wear those pinstripe suits and wing-toed shoes. You know that women also wore wing-tipped shoes like the men did? I couldn't do it. I had to wear my pretty dresses, but I would wear a blazer, but I had to be me. And, you know, I was doing okay and being successful, but it just didn't fit me. So I only lasted 2 years. I left and took a break. And then I went into the world of advertising, which was a whole different kind of masculine, but yet more creative world. So it fit better for me. But I do remember an interview in the job that hired me in my first job in advertising, where this little dynamo woman leaned across the desk and said to me, "Is there a place for anger in the workplace?" And because I'm this intuitive, compassion, kind woman, in my mind I thought, well, why would we be angry in the workplace? But I knew the right answer, so I leaned forward and said, of course there is. And that is when I took on a masculine cloak. That is when I learned how to maneuver through the masculine world. We had to do that in order to be out there and to be accepted in that world. It was a role that we had to take. But women, we don't have to play that role anymore. Please stop. Please stop. Wear your pretty dresses. Wear your big smile. Wear your open heart. Have kind conversation. Be who you are as a woman. Because there is a difference in the dynamic. There is a difference in the dynamic of what woman is compared to male. I love men. I take nothing away from them. And when I am speaking of the wonderful nature of woman, I am not in any way diminishing the wonderful nature of man. I love man. I love his competitive nature. I love his assertiveness. I love his desire to fix things for us and to support us and to uplift us. But we have to learn how to allow them to do so, because we're so masculine in our nature that we say, oh, no, that's okay. I don't need you. It's okay. I can do it. I can do it all myself. And then what place does the man have in our world? It is for us to learn to work cohesively, masculine energy and feminine energy. And I'm not speaking of romantic relationships. I'm just talking about men and women living harmoniously, balanced in a world together. Sometimes I think men are calmer and more compassionate than women are. But it's time for us to take a step back and know that we can be a part of the world that is out there calling for us in our own nature, not needing to be what man, society, has asked us to be, but listening inside of ourselves and knowing what are the words to speak, what is the energy to feel, what is the vibration that I'm putting out, what is the vibration that I'm pulling back into myself, to live in a more alignment with the power that is woman. It will change this world in such a better way, and I just believe that it's what's being called forth. And because I am a Black woman, I am going to say that I believe that what it is to be a Black woman, which in itself is a completely different construct, is what is mostly being called forth in this world today. Because Black woman is strong. Yes, we're called the strong Black woman because we are strong. But stop putting your weight on us. Just because we're strong does not mean that we want your weight to carry too. We have our own weight to carry. We have our own families to care for. When I'm in the workplace and you think that I'm supposed to put what I am doing aside to listen to your story, to care for you, to allow you to cry on my shoulder, while you then walk away and still treat me as if I'm inferior, those days are over. We are unapologetically women and we are unapologetically Black. Put those two things together, you got a whole nother dynamic, and we need all of it. Because the voices of the unheard have been the voices of women. And the voices of the unheard, seriously, have been the voices of Black people. Put together, the voice of a Black woman. You better stop and recognize. You better listen. Because we have some things to say. And we can take this world to a much better place if you stop fearing us. Stop being jealous of us. Listen and walk with us together. Because see, we're not trying to trample over you. We're just trying to show you who we are so that we all have a place on this playing field together. You see, we're all created by a creative intelligence that has us all here on an even playing field. Let us walk together. Let Black women have their voices, because it's a voice that you've not listened to, that you've not heard. Stop and listen to women. Stop and listen to Black women and learn and be educated and move forward in a different way. You'll find more peace. You'll find a greater flourishing and a greater sense of thriving, because we know how to thrive and we know how to flourish, even when you have your knee on our neck, even when you are trying to kill us in every system and we're still here surviving, even when you try to silence our voice, we still have a voice. Sometimes it sounds weak and sometimes it roars very loudly. So this Women's History Month, is the most important of our time. I hope that we can all recognize that, and not just me, this one Black woman who realizes it, because I hear it from inside of myself. I have a place to be that is an elevated place that I've never existed on before. It's not just me. It is true for women. It is true for Black women. So let us all hold hands, be arm in arm in love. As I always say, exhale love. But you got to breathe it in from inside of yourself first, then exhale it out into the world, lockstep with every woman and every man, so that we can care for the children and bring them up in a world that is worthy of their innocence and their beauty. That is the power of woman. That is the power of Black women.